everyone. Welcome to another CIDDL office hours. We're really excited to have everyone join us today on the topic of AI and Assessment 101 with Dr. James Basham and Dr. Matt Marino. I'm going to record this beginning portion of our presentation and it will be uploaded to our YouTube along with on our CIDDL website with a blog as a post reading you can do after joining us today. And any questions we'll save for the end. I'll turn it over to Dr. Basham.
Hey everyone, I'm joined here today by my colleague and friend Matt Marino. We're going to talk real briefly about some questions we receive all the time on AI, and that's AI and assessment. Uh, Matt, I don't know if you want to just feel free to jump in. We're kind of informal here, as you know, in
Yep.
our office hours. But um, Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing already with AI and assessment?
Sure. I think that AI assessment is a way that we can very quickly get feedback to students that we couldn't do traditionally. And so it enables us to move from the idea where we would collect data, go off, analyze it, give them feedback, and potentially implement that into a lesson plan. And now with AI, we're able to analyze that data almost in real time or in real time if we're using some sophisticated information. So AI enables us to lower the amount of time and energy we're putting into the assessment. At the same time, it's giving us reliable results. What are your thoughts on that, Jamie?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously there are concerns with AI as well in assessment, and we have a blog post that people are getting access to right now that's online that goes into all this in more depth than we are here today in this little presentation. But obviously, the concerns we always receive at CIDDL is like, I'm concerned about academic integrity, I'm concerned about validity and fairness, the transparency and trust, making sure that everyone has access to the right models to be able to do this and the right types of assessment, and then um, kind of what it means to the learning process in itself. And one of the concerns that we get all the time, and I've actually experienced in my own family, is that when courses and schools try to put on guardrails on AI use, they do things like put on, for instance, a lockdown browser and make everyone do AI in a lockdown browser to avoid the use of AI in assessment. And by doing that, it actually makes inaccessible assessment. And so that's something I know we've talked about in my family quite a bit with my kids. Or if they go back to paper and pencil, it makes it inaccessible. And so one of the things we've been thinking about here at CIDDL is like if we're just going back to paper and pencil, or we're just going back to having lockdown browsers, we're trying to avoid it. Maybe the conversation has to be kind of how do we actually design effective assessments that integrate AI very purposely and think about how do we actually do this and support more modernized assessments. And again, the blog post goes into more depth on this. Matt, I don't know if you want to
And
jump
yeah, I
in.
was I was just thinking about the fact that we have a number of school districts we've been working with who are using these AI checkers, and they think that if the AI is tell or their AI checker of AI, right, is saying, well, this paper that the student is giving me as an assessment was completely generated by AI. There's very little reliability
Yeah.
behind that. Yet many school districts are investing heavily in that software because they think that it's going to stop cheating. And I
Yeah,
think
I
we've
mean,
got to shift our mindsets to more of a situation where we look at AI as a thought partner instead of a way for a student to cheat, right?
yeah, I mean, one of the things we know we have to do is build AI literacy and fluency across all students,
Right.
and across educators as a whole. And one way to do that is to think about how are we assessing people to in the assessment process. So developing models where human AI collaboration is important in the actual assessment itself, focusing on the process of assessment, not just the product. Traditionally in education, here's the test, go take the test, and that's the product, that's the assessment. And some of the work that we're seeing in the field, and again, if you go to the blog post that we have on the CIDDL website around this topic, there's citations and other research there. But the idea of focusing on the process and embedding that sort of human critical thinking, uh, the idea of embedding purposeful use of AI, and then also questioning and actually auditing what the AI says in the process is critically important. So embedding the assessment process and then focusing on higher order thinking and more authentic tasks, et cetera. So Matt, I've got a couple examples here. I pulled some from one of my classes actually. Um, I know you and I didn't have a lot of time just to pull over to go over these in much detail, but before today. But so here's an example of an assessment process. And again, I'm hitting the blog hard today, folks. I'm sorry, but the blog has a lot of in-depth information on it. But here's an example of an assessment process that I actually used last spring. It's been modified slightly for an undergraduate course that's teaching pre-service educators. So where they get to choose a case study. So we had 5 or 6 case studies they chose from. They go through the analysis process, define the problems that they're seeing in the case study. They use the course materials and identify appropriate research or evidence-based practices to support the case study. They then collaborate with an AI and use effective prompting techniques to get some solutions and kind of craft this sort of collaborative relationship. They critique and refine what the AI says and kind of put evidence behind kind of what it's saying or evidence around what they're thinking. And then they develop their solutions, reflect on it, develop a video that talks about the process they undertook and how they came up with solutions for the case study itself. And then they submit the work and including the AI transcript. So we then get to see how they interacted with it and what they actually did. So that's just one thing that we use. Matt, I'm sure you've done stuff like this with your courses.
Yeah, and I was actually going to give a K-12 example. So the K-12 example, we had a middle school teacher who was asking students to do some problem-based learning. And the first step to the problem was figuring out the bio data from their school. So they were outside in an area that had the playground and the parking lot. And they were taking samples from water in the parking lot. They took soil samples, and then they took another sample from the slide. And um, they took pictures of these different items and then measured the microorganisms in these 3 different places. And they took that information, put it into the AI, and then they came up with their own hypothesis about which one was supporting different types of growth of microorganisms. And they asked AI to do the same thing. And then they worked collaboratively in groups to determine whether the AI was accurately giving them the correct information about what they were seeing in their own backyard. I think having that kind of problem-based learning and assessment is very beneficial for students.
Yeah, I kind of think that same thing. The more authentic we can make it, the more realistic we can make it. And, not everyone's going to have access to the materials and tools to do everything. So even having AIs help develop maybe some synthetic data if we need to, or case studies, all of that stuff is critically important. So we're not going to belabor this. There's again a lot of information on the blog, but we wanted to kind of hit up with folks on some of the design elements and things that we need to be thinking about as we're redesigning the education system to integrate AI effectively and to ensure that we are actually bringing the humans forward in the process, but also teaching them not only the content area knowledge they need, but also the AI literacy and fluency they need and embedding that within the process. So there are ways to do this effectively, but we have to kind of really rethink what these assessments look like. So I guess we'll kind of open it up for questions online if people want to do the questions while we're recording. Or as you know, if you come to office hours, we shut off the recording and then have open conversation if you show up live. So does anyone want to ask questions now before we go into the non-recorded version.
Guess one quick question, Matt, around the AI checkers, is that mainly a K-12 issue, or do we have higher ed dabbling into the AI checkers also?
Yeah, I think it's both. That's a great point, Bob.
Yeah, Bob, it's a question that CIDDL receives all the time around what are the good AI checkers that are out there, and again, we've talked about it in this on our office hours before, and what we know is that they're not reliable, and they don't have a lot of validity and reliability to them. Although salespeople do a really good job at selling them to both K-12 institutions and higher ed institutions.
Uh-huh. And do you have any update on policy making in K-12 districts that are, you seen an increase in districts that are wanting to create more effective AI policies for their school districts these days? What's the latest you guys are seeing on that?
It's all over the board. In fact, I was talking today with Angelica in an earlier meeting. Schools are going anti-tech. Some schools are going back to low-tech, paper pencil sort of things. Other schools are integrating it very purposely, and it's everything in between. We're going to be doing more on that, I think, in CIDDL going forward. But Bob, that I think we actually said today, I said, I bet you someone asked us about that today because it's all over the
Bob
board.
always keeps us on our toes. He always is thinking about the stuff that we're talking about. So coming soon, Bob.
Sounds great. Sounds great. We really appreciate the collaboration.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank. All right. Well, I'm going to end this office hour. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our next office hour will be May 5th, and we will be going over our CIDDL needs assessment data that we collected. So, information coming soon, and make sure you join us for our next office hour. Thank you so much.